Hello and welcome back to We Love the State. This is the state-sanctioned podcast. I am your host, Andy Coons, and right over here to my right or left or whatever fucking way it is my awesome badass co-host, Ben DeJong. How you doing, Ben?
Doing good. I'm glad we're back in the saddle. It's been way too long.
It's been a rough month and a half.
Yeah,
you
it's
know,
it's like leaving the house without your phone, and you're like, what feels like something's missing?
yeah.
Like what feels wrong? What yeah, like definitely missed it. So
Uh-huh.
we'll have to make up for it. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, 2022 was insane to say the least. I Today we're talking about, maybe I should start with this. Today we're talking about our 2023 predictions. And earlier I started writing stuff down, and maybe I'm getting too deep into it or expecting too much or something like that, but I mean, I started thinking about it and I'm like, man, 2023 could be a fucking crazy year, you know?
With everything that's we set the stage last year,
Mm-hmm.
or set the table, however whatever pun you want to throw in there.
Yeah.
But so we kind of have a general idea of some very possible scenarios that could play out this year.
Mm-hmm.
From my perspective, I don't think very many of them are good.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they're necessary to clean out the system, but I think it's gonna be tough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It definitely, to me, and maybe I sound like a whiny, bitchy, black-pilled person, but 2023 is not looking great. you know, I think with the foundation of 2016 through 2022 underneath it, 2023, at worst, is going to be the culmination of all those things building on top of each other, and explode into something really, violent. And at best, then it'll be a repeat of 2022, and we can expect it to get worse and worse from there on out.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much longer we can keep kicking the can down the road. I
Yeah.
mean, you just think that at some point the chickens have to come home to roost.
Yeah.
We just spent, what was the last omnibus bill? Like 1.7 or 1.5
$1.7 trillion.
Like, I remember Barack Obama and the bail, at least the first TARP, wasn't it TARP? It was like 900 billion, and everyone was like, holy crap, like
Mm-hmm.
that's the biggest spend ever from the the Republicans were like, whoa, we can't do this.
Yeah.
And here we are,
2023. Yeah, 2022. We're like, let's just go ahead and double that.
Yeah, hey, there wasn't any, and that's the thing is, I don't think people understand, I can't remember the phrase. It's the normalization of deviance, and I love that phrase. Heard a lecturer at some point, but it's like when wrong becomes normalized because we got away with it.
Yeah.
So we just keep on going. But eventually wrong is going to be wrong, and you're going to have to pay for it. And
so I'm really glad that you brought that up, because my biggest prediction, or the thing that I think is the most likely, is we're going to see, I think we're going to see a major fracturing of the Democratic Party. And I think it's going to come down to the Democratic Party's support of quote unquote groomers and maps.
do you think I do see a lot of Democrats, like you got Jimmy Dore, you've got, there's a lot of pundits or social media influencers that I think are very much continue to separate further and further from the Democratic Party. But I think the people that are in DC, they just seem pretty lockstep with whatever. You got the Squad, who are totally anti-war, totally anti, Israel abusing Palestine, and they back down. I just don't see anybody on the Democratic side to say no.
Well, I mean,
Or maybe that's a better question, like, how do you see it fracturing?
yeah, well, it's because the people who are in support of like kids going to drag shows and stuff like that, and they keep looking the other way, looking the other way, looking the other way. I think eventually it's going to get to a point where some crazy ass motherfucker is going to be like, "Listen, pedophilia isn't bad." Says something like ridiculous like that.
It's
Who's
getting
going to have,
close.
yeah. And so when that finally does happen, I think that's when we're going to see a huge split between Democrats who are like, you know what, I was okay with kids going to drag shows, but talking about pedophiles, you guys are fucked up. I don't think they're going to run to the Republican Party, but I
That
think
is gonna be very telling because to your point, I think we're very close to, like, what do they call, it's not pedophile anymore, it's called,
maps,
like,
minor
yeah,
attracted
minor
person.
attracted person,
Yeah.
like, talk about, like, Orwellian doublespeak.
Yeah.
It is
Yeah.
crazy how much of 1984 has come to fruition in the
Hmm.
last few years.
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
It's
I mean, we are
scary.
definitely living through, I just yeah, it's just insane. Every time I think it can't get crazier, and then I look at the news and there's something else that happened,
Hmm.
or like I'm like, "What?"
Hmm. But like they're gonna give pedophiles the same treatment that they gave like gay and trans people on the left. And what I mean by that is like they're going to pour through and find historical figures. Oh, well, this person was a minor attracted person. He was one of our founding fathers. This
Yeah,
person led,
he married a 17-year-old.
he married a 17-year-old. This guy married a 13-year-old, and he was very, very kind and loving to her and blah, blah, blah. Minor attracted person doesn't mean rape. I think we're going to start hearing those kind of sentiments in the coming year. And then eventually I think it's going to get to a breaking point where you're going to have like left-wing people who got sucked into this ideology but are like honest decent people. I think they're going to be like, what, fuck that, and there's going to be schism. I think we're going to see the same kind of schism on the right, between establishment Republicans and the MAGA Republicans. I think that is a ticking time bomb. um
That I
Especially.
think is like an obvious one because
Oh yeah.
especially
Well, that
if
one's been in
DeSantis
the
runs,
works, you know.
and
Yeah.
then you've got DeSantis versus Trump,
Hmm.
that's a split party right there.
Yep. Absolutely. And I mean, that you could even say that's been in the works since 2016, 2015, I would say. Ever since Donald Trump announced he was running for president. Um I think that we're going to see the tipping point of that, where you're going to see a clearly defined split in the Republican Party as well. And so then it's going to be four parties. It's going to be the four-party system. This is where I'm probably looking way beyond just the next 12 months and looking at the next 5 to 10 years. But um, I think I was thinking a lot about the fact that we're having conversations about if pedophilia is wrong or if grooming is wrong, or that there are two factions of people in this country who cannot fucking agree on that, tells me that A, we're living in two different realities, and B, man, that inches us closer and closer towards like violent conflict. And
Or
so
some form of national divorce.
yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. When it comes to kids, I think um well, okay. So I was watching Tim Pool the other day. Um and he was talking about a situation in Texas where this guy and his wife got divorced and she wanted to take their son to California because he this kid's like fucking 3 or 4 or some shit like that. And she wants to move to California so she can get him a sex change surgery. And he's like trying to get the Texas courts to stop her, but they're like, there's nothing we can do. And he's basically begging to not allow his wife to take his child to another state so she can fucking castrate him, you know, a child. And uh and so I think we're gonna see more stories like that. Maybe not exactly the same, but more stories of people who are like, my nephew got taken across and eventually it's gonna happen to somebody who's like, if you take my fucking kid to a different state to try to transition them, I will fucking kill you. you know?
Or just show up at the house with a gun and say, "I'm taking my son," or "You're
Yes.
gonna get shot."
And that's going to set the precedent. Oh, that kid never got transitioned. The people on our side of the argument are going to see like, oh, that kid was rescued, you know? And that's going to set precedent. Well, this is how you rescue these children. Uh you use
Violence.
violence, you know? And then boom, we've got two sets of or two conflicting ideologies that are willing to die for their beliefs, you know?
Yeah, and that's, I think, to your point, that could be the tipping point, because then you're gonna have people who are protesting both sides of an issue like that.
Right.
Like, how dare, well, and that's, yeah, it's just gonna get ugly. And I think we've talked about this before on the podcast around, having a national divorce before things get violent
Yeah.
is ideal.
Mhm.
And that's why I've always kind of championed it, because I'm concerned if we don't do it sooner rather than later, we're going to have, people are going to start killing each other.
I think
And
I think
that's
if it was
scary.
set in the works right now, like if there was a bill put in front of Senate, like, hey, you have to vote on this. This is our national divorce bill. I still think we would see some kind of violence because of that. So I think we're way beyond whatever that point was, wherever that marker was on our timeline. I think we passed that a long time ago. And there's I don't think there's a way that we can have a national divorce without both of these sides taking up arms and shooting at each other, you know?
From my understanding, as far as national divorce goes, it just takes a state to vote to exit the union.
Well, I'm not talking
And
about like
they've
military.
tried that. They've tried that before in Texas, passing those type of bills, a secession bill.
Hmm.
But like a New Hampshire, a Texas, a South Dakota, I mean, these are pretty red states where if they succeed, if they successfully succeed,
Hmm.
um, I don't see there being any violence. There may be some protests, but they're so overwhelmingly, I think they'll be overwhelmingly pro secession because of, like, especially if we get, minor attracted persons, if we get pedophilia, if a court starts ruling that
Hmm.
it's okay as long as they're consenting, like, that's the kind of stuff where it's not going to take much to get a whole state, or at least a vast majority of that state, to say, no,
Yeah.
we're out.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to put this on us.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it'll,
I like, I, I don't really see the Civil War. Sorry, I was an alarm on my phone. I don't really see a civil war erupting militarily at first.
mhm.
I'd say we could see a year or two um, of protesters and counter protesters getting violent with each other, like fatally violent, not just throwing bike locks at each other, but like actively trying to kill each other. I think we could see like a year of that before the military is like, okay, we have to step in, you know? And that's where
Well,
I could see states like California or Oregon or Washington saying like, well, we're going to use our coast guards to protect these counter or to protect these protesters, and that's when you have different factions of military. I don't really know though. Like I don't want to definitely like stake my claim like this is going to happen and this is how it happens, because I don't know the hierarchy of like military command when it comes to like the Coast Guard in California versus the Coast Guard in New York or something
or
like
the
that,
militias. I mean,
or the
there's a lot of states
militias.
with
Yeah,
active militia. Yeah.
yeah. So um
That, I think, and especially when it comes to national divorce, I think the water's boiling. It hasn't boiled over yet.
mhm,
I think what will be the turning point is if the federal government pushes something, whether Republic, Democrat, no matter what, but if the state says, no, that you've gone too far, we're drawing a line in the sand.
yeah.
So let's say, if, again, hypothetically, Trump gets reelected and he pushes for some ban on abortions across the state, across all of the country,
Mhm,
that would be enough for, like, California to be like, that's a line in the sand.
mhm.
We're out.
Yeah.
If you have the dollar collapse and inflation go to, 10, 15%, that may be where Texas is like, all right, it's too far. You're stealing all of our money. We're out. We're gonna. So there needs to be a line that's been crossed at the federal level that pushes a state out.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think there's plenty of opportunity there, right? I
Hmm.
mean, um, Biden's already, just between the war and I mean, he hasn't really pushed a lot of like social agendas that would be big enough hot topics for a red state to be, to dip. But there's so many possibilities.
Hmm.
And that's what's crazy. It's not just like, oh, inflation's bad. That's, that could really tip over. It's like, oh no, there's nuclear holocaust. No, no, there's World War III. Oh no, there's the destruction of the US dollar. Or maybe there's the US dollar's reign as the world reserve currency is over because BRICS comes out with a currency backed by commodities, gold, silver, oil, plutonium,
Hmm.
and everyone flocks to that currency and dumps the dollar.
Hmm.
Like, we would be automatically like would be almost like a third world country.
Hmm.
Like, all of that money that is sitting in these Federal Reserve banks all around the world, and they're like, we're dumping this to go with the BRICS bucks or
Yeah.
whatever the heck they want to call it.
Brick spots. I really hope they do
That a
call it
brick
that.
in your pants, or are you just happy to see me? Did you just shit a brick?
Oh
Because
man.
that's worth something now.
I feel like the rappers are gonna have fun with that.
Yeah,
You know,
I mean, the
start
comedians are
singing like
definitely gonna have fun with that.
yeah. Oh man. Speaking of comedy, this is totally off subject, but uh little announcement for the listeners. So my other podcast, Holding Hands, my co-host of that show, his name is Rick McGinnis. He's got another podcast called Two Guys, One Cup. And it's him and yet another co-host named Perry. And they do all these prompts out of this cup, like, a lot of like would you rathers or fuck Mary kills or, stuff like that. Um and they did a live show at a bar. Bunch of stand-up comics, and I was part of the panel and had a great fucking time. There were, I mean, the comics that we had on the show were just brilliant, and they were all like Michigan comics. Ton of fun. That should be up on everywhere you get podcasts pretty soon. I don't know when he's gonna upload it, but it was an awesome time. So if you want to hear me drunk making jokes in a bar, then you can go check that out. Also, I turned the entire room during the show.
You turned them gay.
No, it's funny you say that though. But it was a would you rather, and it was a really dumb would you rather, because it was like, would you rather feel pain or would you rather go dancing in the rain? It was stupid. So everyone's like, well, obviously I want to dance in the rain, blah, blah, blah. So it got to me and I was like, I'm going to throw you guys a curveball. I'll take the pain because it's manly over dancing in the rain because dancing's gay. The whole crowd, like, there were crickets at first, and then one guy was like, boo. It was just a chorus of boos from the crowd.
Yeah,
So,
that'll be a fun one.
yeah. So you guys should
Yeah,
check that out.
yeah, and something we should definitely talk about at some point is to do kind of a live show.
Yeah.
It'd be even better if we could partner up with another podcast and
Mm-hmm.
do a joint live show.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for that, because
Mm-hmm.
it will happen this year. I'm gonna make that a promise, a presidential promise.
Hell yeah.
There will be a live show for We Love the State at some point this year, and yeah, that's gonna be a barn burner.
Yeah.
I can't wait.
Yeah. That's going to be fun. So, anyway, so back to 2023 predictions. So how do you see Biden's last year in office going?
I think it's gonna be a lot of the same stuff. I mean, I just, it's so frustrating because I think things have become so obvious I think, at least from my perspective, that the government is the enemy. I
Mhm.
mean, you've got a lot of the JFK leaks or JFK, stuff that's come out.
That's been
Um,
wild.
yeah, and I just finally watched the JFK documentary that Oliver Stone did, and he did an updated documentary,
Mhm.
and it's like JFK something or other, but it's
Where'd you
basically
find that?
up. I think it was on Netflix.
Okay, I'll check it out.
And, I'd never have I mean, I've listened to Joe Rogan and a lot of other, like, just podcasts of people talking about it, but I'd never watched something that just laid out the evidence, like, piece by piece.
Mhm.
Like, if you watch that, there there is n I can't I mean, no sane person that would walk away from that and be like, "Yeah, that was definitely, a single gunman in a," like, it's so crystal clear that that was orchestrated by the CIA.
Mhm.
And it'd be
Especially when
great
you
if
have somebody in the CIA saying like, "Yeah, it's all bullshit." The CIA was definitely involved in JFK's assassination.
right. Yeah, and the fact that the government continues to refuse to, divulge all of the documents,
Mhm.
and a lot of the documents are so heavily redacted, it's almost
And you know what Trump said? He said it was because of national security. Like
yeah,
how? This
yeah.
was 60 years ago almost. And like what
It's security in the fact that it's gonna make the national government look bad.
yeah. Yep.
Yeah, it's not about, like, enemies outside the United States. It's just I mean, but that's,
Yeah,
like,
it's not
such
like
a
the Taliban was behind this as well,
right,
you know?
right. I mean, but you're looking like I mean, there's talk I mean, I think it's pretty clear that Martin Luther King was killed by the FBI, or at least FBI had a hand in it.
Well, I mean,
Um,
we already know about the FBI's suicide note that they wrote for him, you know? And like sending recordings of him and other women to his wife, like they wanted him gone, you know?
oh yeah, they were actively trying to, and I think they finally did.
Mhm.
But you don't have nearly the attention on the Martin Luther King than you do than in JFK. So I'm kind of hoping that that's the next shoe to drop because it's in the very, similar vein and
Mhm.
timeline or time frame. But just like even today, today's politicians, there's the whole McCarthy debacle, and they're like, that was televised, and it was
Mhm.
like clearly it was all about backroom deals and bribery.
Mhm.
I mean, they were even like listening to some of the like clips, I think, that I can't remember where I watched them, but they were talking, like, do we have a vote to end today's proceedings to continue to tomorrow? And they would like people would vote no, and then the nays win, and then because it's not good enough, they would just be like, all right, let's vote again. And so, like the idea that you can just keep voting until the outcome of the state
Is
is
what you want.
achieved,
Yeah.
that's not democracy.
No.
It's so crooked to say
Have, have
not enough people are paid off for the votes to go the right way, quote
have
unquote.
have you seen all the videos of Marjorie Taylor Greene being all super fucking sketchy around McCarthy?
Oh, and it's that's just I think Massey
Mhm.
actually pushed from I'm like, this is a dude that's wearing a Ukraine pin for the last year, who I think there was a text that was leaked, and I remember who he said it, but he's like, I promise to provide you an endless war. Like, this is the guy that Massey and like, that's just I have gone. No, there's no respect. And
Yeah.
and part of it, I'm sure that the way that Thomas Massey justifies it, and I because I saw Justin Amash, and that's a totally different or another topic because oh, he was just craving to get called back into Congress to be elected for. I mean, he ran, flew right to DC, and he
Mhm.
was like, right. He's such a it's just so sad to see somebody so entrenched, and so he clearly misses the attention
Mhm.
of DC
Yeah.
that, like, any chance he has to potentially, get back into good graces or whatever that is, he's right back into Washington. I'm like, dude, it's just gross. But anyhow, like,
I mean,
uh,
it makes you wonder like how they line those people's pockets, you know? Like
Well, I think
is it money? Is it power? Is it sex? Like,
I think the excuse, especially from a Massey or from an Amash, is I'm voting the way that I believe my constituents want me to vote.
mhm,
And so that gets them around the moral hazard of this is wrong. I know it's wrong.
yeah,
And I'm not going to vote the way that I know to be true or I know what's right or wrong. It's I will use my constituents as a scapegoat, or
yeah,
I'm going to do it because it makes me look good to them.
mhm,
Like that's the whole problem with representational democracy is are you voting um, because you have like a moral standard or you have like a line in the sand that you're not willing to cross, or are you just a puppet for your perception of what your constituents want?
right,
I'd much rather have somebody who bucks their constituents and says, "This is wrong.
yeah,
You guys are just want Trump because he's a dick."
mhm,
And like that's the whole thing. Like even with Massey, I mean, there was moments where he was pushing back against Trump,
mhm,
but then I'm sure his office got a whole bunch of calls from like MAGA Republicans in his state, and they're like, "Back Trump," and then he backs down. I don't know how you can do that and look in the mirror every morning. I mean, you've got to play some crazy mental gymnastics to justify actions that you know are wrong.
mhm. Well, again, at the risk of sounding like a black-pilled emo kid, um,
You need a little bit longer hair if you want to go emo, but
I'm working on it.
just my
Yeah,
perspective.
and I
Maybe
have
some black eyeliner.
yeah, I haven't
Make it
found where my wife keeps her eyeliner yet. Um, I listen to all the right music for it.
it's true. And I like how you said our eyeliner. So that you may be emo. Yeah. Not hers, but ours.
Yeah.
I haven't found where my wife keeps our eyeliner.
So, honestly, I think for liberty-minded people, for like ANCAPs, you know, Mecox, I think for people like us, um, and you know, outside of libertarianism, even like people like Jimmy Dore, um, people who really do believe in like freedom and liberty and freedom of speech and things like that. Honestly, I really think our best shot is something like a Free State Project, you know, and just going there and building our own communities and arming ourselves to the teeth. And whenever the cops or whenever the National Guard or whatever comes on our borders, say, you guys have to get the fuck out. This is not yours anymore. This is ours.
And I would actually, you know what? I would love to see that for the UP.
Yeah.
Like a succession to have to form their whether it's their own state or their own country, and basically say we're done. Like it, because I mean they very much lean Republican. They're very mega in that in a lot of ways. But if you could get them to see Trump for who he really is, I mean, he just wants to be liked. He wants attention.
Hmm.
And if that means, you know, bragging about Operation Warp Speed or, you know, like bitching about Fauci, but at the same time not firing him.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so the hypocrisy and the fact that he's clearly just playing into it for, yeah. I mean, he does let a lot of truth slip when he talks
Hmm.
about wars and about a lot of that kind of stuff, but he doesn't do anything about any of that. And I have a feeling. I mean, I'd love to hear what you think about. Do you think he's going to be allowed to run? Because
Trump.
I don't think the Republican establishment wants him to run. And I wonder, could they use a lot of these court um, dramas to justify saying no?
Hmm.
Because ultimately, it's the Republican Party that can decide whether he is going to be a nominee or not.
Yeah. Well, given the way the McCarthy thing went down, I would say probably not, you know? Um, I'd say we're probably looking at a DeSantis nomination from the
How
RNC.
much do you think DeSantis is in the pocket of the party?
I
Or because
I
that's what they want a Bush, they want a Cheney.
yeah.
They want a party man who's just going to be controlled by the state. I mean,
Mm-hmm,
that's who we have now with Joe Biden. He's just a puppet. He's a
mm-hmm.
figurehead. He doesn't make any decisions,
No.
and that's what both parties want. They
Mm-hmm.
want somebody to read a speech and keep their mouth shut.
Yeah. Um, I mean, I can't say for sure. I I tend to lean towards he's, if gun to his head, he's establishment. You know. Um, I think if he didn't have any worries, he would go in there and be more populist, I guess. But I think at the end of the day, like if he has to plant his flag on either side, he's planting it on establishment. You know,
Yeah,
and
and
and that
I've
and
heard.
that could have like it. That makes me wonder, like going back to the JFK assassination. I'm getting all ramped up because I'm switching into conspiracy theory mode. But like, it makes you wonder. Yeah, I left my goddamn tinfoil inside. But like, it makes you wonder with the CIA assassinating JFK, which they totally fucking did, people. Um,
It's yeah. Everybody
I
needs to
wonder if
go and
that
watch
is. I wonder if that
JFK.
is what determines if you're establishment or not. If you're afraid of the CIA or not.
Well, you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if, like, first day in the office, they're like, "Here's the truth on everything." And
Yeah,
especially when it comes to this to JFK being assassinated, there's I think there's clear, like, "Don't cross us or we'll kill you" vibe in that discussion.
yeah,
I'm sure they don't come right out and say it, but they
yeah.
were,
Heavily
they
imply it.
probably have to make a case and heavily apply it. And there has clearly not been a president since JFK who's been like, I don't care, you're all fired,
Hmm.
we're cutting funding, we're shutting you down, I'm willing to risk my life
Hmm.
for my country. Washington's full of cowards,
Hmm.
and that's what just that's just what drives me nuts about people like Thomas Massey, because I respect him so much, but he votes for the swamp,
Hmm.
and then all of a sudden, I just I don't believe him when he says we need to drain the swamp. It's like you just voted for McCarthy.
Hmm.
Don't tell me you want to drain this. Then to me now you're just marketing or trying to get reelected.
Yeah.
This is just talking points. You don't actually believe it because I saw what you actually did, not what you're saying you want to do.
Hmm. Well, it. I mean, because yeah, I mean, Thomas Massey doesn't seem like he would have gone for McCarthy. It doesn't make any sense. McCarthy was wearing a uh, fucking handkerchief with the Ukrainian colors on it. Like he is projecting to everyone whose side he's on. And there's a lot of Republicans who are not on that side. And when I say
Which is
Republicans, I mean
crazy.
like citizens.
But there were some Republicans that were pushing that said we are not going to vote for you until you absolutely make concessions.
Mm-hmm.
And granted, I don't know what the concessions were. I don't know how hard and fast those are. Is it like sign your name in blood that you will not vote for any more, funding to Ukraine? Or I don't know what those consensus are, and I don't know like how. I mean, is it just a campaign promise that's going to be broken as soon as he gets the position?
Right.
But the fact that Thomas Massey wasn't even willing to push with I mean, there are other Republicans that were pushing and saying we're not going to vote for you unless A, B, and C. And the fact that I mean, it's not like Massey would have been a lone wolf, and he's shown he's willing to do that in some cases. He would have had support from other party members if he would have. But to just be like, no, no, I think we need to go. I'm just, it's disgusting,
Mm-hmm.
and even, watching, Justin just salivating at the chance of getting back into DC, um, it's gross.
Our best hope with this whole McCarthy thing is that the MAGA people have shit on McCarthy. You know, and that because Marjorie Taylor Greene, she's been an advocate for national divorce. She's been an advocate for pulling all of our troops out of every fucking active war that we're in right now and bringing our troops home. She's been in favor of all these like pretty libertarian things, but yet she goes and votes for McCarthy. And so like this is like I hope this is the case. I hope people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massey have shit on McCarthy, and they're like, we'll put you in as speaker, but we have demands. These are the things that we're going to get done, you know? I doubt it, but man, that would be the best case scenario.
I do believe that they feel that they've reached an agreement with McCarthy on a lot of those things. Where so there's been speculation about Marjorie Taylor Greene being able to be appointed as a chair, or at least be on a committee where she feels like she can make a difference. And so she's willing to look the other way and plug her nose and vote for McCarthy because he's promised her a seat on a committee that she feels like she can do some good in.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I'm talking about, like, mental gymnastics. You have to rationalize that what you're doing is for the greater good. And but I mean, everybody in history has done that. I mean, Hitler did that. Stalin did that. They all believed that their actions were for the greater good. But really, like, you have to kind of like hide your principles, or like sweep them under the rug a little bit to get to the greater good. And that's the problem of the the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the one or the few.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great Star Trek line, and it was so libertarian in Star Trek 2, I think it was, where, Spock was risking his life for the Enterprise, and Kirk said, "No, like, your life is the the benefit of the many does not outweigh the benefit of the one."
Mm-hmm.
And we're just we're so, I mean, I was going to say dipping our toes into that, but that's kind of a foundational element of socialism, is
Mm-hmm.
the many outweigh the one.
Yeah.
And the fact that people like Thomas Massey is willing to say, "Hey, I'm willing to sacrifice my beliefs or my principles for the greater good," then you're down the path.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you open the door to socialism, because I think it's kind of a founding tenet, is that all choices should be made for the greater good, and fuck your principles.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't bode well for the country when, even though the members in DC and Congress that we respect are selling out.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know. I kind of feel like eventually that was going to happen. I feel like I, I feel like you can't really get anything done unless you're willing to bend over for the state eventually. You know, like maybe you can get elected into Congress, and man, I sound so depressing. But like, yeah, you could be like a member of Congress and be like, oh, I'm gonna plant my foot. But like, if you get into Senate or uh on somebody's White House administration or something like that, where you're like deep inside the system, I feel like you get to a certain point where there's a hard barrier, and you're like, if you're going to cross this barrier, you're going to be on our team, you know? And so that's why I'm like, you know what? I think all the ANCAPs in the United States just need to throw their hands up and say, fuck this thing. We're moving to New Hampshire. We're bringing all of our guns with us, and fuck you if you tell us otherwise, you know?
Or for people in Michigan, that, if that can be a movement
Mm-hmm.
of, like, secession for the UP, it would be crazy to see how many people, I think, the trolls below the bridge, as they like to call us, like, all right, we're going to move to the UP.
Mm-hmm.
It would be interesting to see what type of migration that would cause,
Mm-hmm.
if that was even a potential chance for the UP to become whether its own country or just simply its own state.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, there's
Can they
and
get
I don't
can they get like supplies through the I don't know what the fucking river is, but the river system that connects the Great Lakes to the ocean? Like, can they get like barges
Yep.
through there
Got the
and
Sue locks that are up there. I mean,
okay.
there's definitely ways to be able to trade
Okay, good.
with other nations
Hmm.
through the locks.
Yeah. 'Cause, I mean, obviously, I mean, there's a lot of manufacturing still in Michigan. So, I mean, that'd be an easy trade partner right there,
Right.
you
But they
know.
border Canada and they
Hmm.
border Wisconsin.
So, I mean,
I
so
mean,
we've got cheese and maple syrup covered.
oh yeah. I mean, if I can eat cheese and drink maple syrup, I don't like, and I got my guns and my freedom,
Yeah.
that's kind of paradise.
Well, to the listeners, we are violently changing topics because I heard one of my kids screaming. I had to run away, and we're just getting back now, and we don't remember where we were. So,
Moving on
moving on.
to financial dilemmas. So, um, it's interesting that because I remember, prior to the 2008 collapse, like the Fed and everybody was saying, everything is stable, everything's okay, don't worry. And that was kind of like a message across the board. Like every news outlet was saying, mortgages are fine, the everything's fine, and then it collapsed.
Hmm.
And it's very different this time around because every time you turn on the news, they're talking about the 2023 recession. And it's just weird because it's almost like eerie because everybody knows and is saying it's going to happen. I mean, there's a lot of different perspective that I think, some people are like, "Oh no, there'll be a soft landing or it'll be some bumps in the road." And then some people are like, "The world's going to end." It's just like, but everybody agrees that we're going to have a recession this year.
Hmm.
And yet, I think the stock market was up again today.
Yeah.
So it's just like there's a consensus that it's going to occur, but no one is panicking yet.
Yeah.
It is very strange because it just feels like what is the trigger? Because everybody knows it's going to happen, but nobody wants to get out until it's obvious that it's next week or tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah, it's very interesting. And sometimes I wonder because a lot of other countries have invested in the US stock market, especially for their pension funds. A lot of the other like central banks have invested in the US stock market. So we are propping up so much of the world's financial system. And when when we take a nosedive, the ramifications I think are going to be just extreme.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think because so many countries and so many institutions are all in the stock market because it's the only way that they've been able to show any profit. They're in a way kind of propping up the system and preventing it from correction.
Yeah.
But I mean, it will be interesting, especially because a lot of people are talking about the fact that the banking system has so many mortgages on their balance sheets. And as interest rates rise, property value falls. And a lot of these banks, they're all of a sudden what's showing as a profit on their balance sheet is going to show as a negative. And it's almost like a tipping point. Like who's going what's the domino that's going to fall first?
Right.
What bank, whatever it is, like who's going to go and file for bankruptcy first? And then everybody's going to be like, "All right, that's my cue. I'm out." I think it's only going to take one
Yeah.
and the whole house of cards is going to start to collapse. And that's what I'm nervous for because the US economy is in totally insolvent and it's totally debt dependent. And if, debt isn't cheap anymore, at 0% interest, the Fed is, or yeah, the Fed's gonna, as soon as things collapse, they're gonna reverse course, like back down to zero interest, back down to quantitative easing. And, what's that gonna do for the dollar? Because a lot of people are still, a lot of countries that have seen really bad inflation are actually using the dollar in the black market to trade. I mean, I think there's quite a few countries that are just like, all right, we'll take the dollar, but we're not going to take anything else. But if the dollar collapses or starts falling, it's just it's hard to like predict like the pattern that the dominoes will fall, but it's going to be what am I trying to think?
Catastrophic.
Catastrophic. I was like castration. Like that's not the one I'm looking for. It's probably something similar.
I hope you're not
So
looking for that one.
well, in a way, it's literally chopping the dick off the U.S. economy if the dollar collapses. So I
Yeah.
mean, there is a castration element in play,
Hmm.
but that's what's going to be very interesting to see on the financial side of things. I mean, so we have social, discord and social unrest and fighting in we've got financial like doom and gloom. I mean, a recession is just imminent, and we've got World War III or nuclear holocaust that is imminent.
Hmm.
It's just crazy to think that we have to deal with all three at the same time. And I don't know if we've ever talked about the Ray Dalio. He put out, it was kind of based on one of his books, but it's kind of like a video on how um world um world not world civilization, what I'm trying to think of, like empires, world empires, how they rise and fall. And it's just so fascinating. I remember watching it probably 2020 and was like, wow, he's really on point with this. And now we're here at 2023. And I'm like, he laid out a roadmap.
Yeah.
And that's what's crazy because it's all coming true exactly as he laid it out. And yet we have so many politicians that they have the roadmap in front of them. It's already been spelled out. If you keep going, this is the result. And they're just like, I won't be in the office at that point, so that'll be somebody else.
Yeah.
They'll have to deal with it.
Yeah.
It's
So
starting to look like an Oompa Loompa as the sun goes down. I need to like, wow, I got tan or kind of green all of a sudden. So let me see if I can fix that. Oh, that's worse. There we go.
so uh so to kind of wrap this up a little bit. How how do you think how do you think all of this ends? Like whenever we look back and we say America started in or the United States started in 1776 and ended in 2029, let's say. How what does the end of the United States, what do you think that looks like?
I read I don't know if it was like a white paper or just a fictional thought experiment of how the world or how the United States ended. If I can find it, will link it in the show notes because it's very poignant and very potential because it definitely deals with the US being overextended, inflation is rampant, and we're facing wars on multiple fronts. But at the same time, we don't have money to fund anymore, and like how things collapse. And I think that it was very on point, especially with the environment today. um but I would say to everybody, and not to sound like a prepper, but it's gonna get worse. And I think everybody can agree on that, and just nobody can agree on like when and how bad is it gonna get.
Mm-hmm.
So make sure you're debt free as much as possible. I mean, it's definitely one thing to be, to have a mortgage, especially if you got a mortgage on a low interest rate, you can like thank the gods that you locked in at that rate,
Yeah.
but just plan on not moving anytime soon.
Hmm.
Um, I can't remember who. I don't remember if it was Jimmy Dore or one of them had talked. One of the head of one of the Fed banks was saying, I think she's going to be retiring, and she kind of let it slip that she doesn't see inflation going under 5% for the next 5 years or something, like 3 years or something crazy like that,
Yeah.
right? And so even the people in charge are saying it's going to be bad.
Yeah.
So, like, get out of debt as much as you possibly can, or unsecured debt, we'll put it that way. And then invest in um commodities, especially when it comes to like food, oil, precious metals in general. I think that's a big thing. I just found out that we are 100% reliant on Russia for plutonium to fuel our nuclear power plants.
Hmm.
Like, I mean, it sounds like there might be some mines up in Canada that, that could be exploited for that, but it's just like, I mean, if China or Russia says we're not going to give you this anymore, and this being exports of any kind, it's just things just collapse really fast.
Right.
So we definitely need to make sure that we're prepared for r- rougher times than what we've already experienced.
Yeah.
So like that's where I'm very hopeful in communities getting together and saying, all right, you're growing wheat, you're growing corn. Let's have a farmer's market every day, if not just once a week. And instead of being dependent on, Gordon Food Services or, some place that's restocking the grocery store or the restaurants, we're going to do that internally.
Yeah.
So how do we, uh, partner together and meet our needs as a community and stop being dependent on external vendors or external sources for our day-to-day needs.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be, that's key. And I think that's where Europe really has us, is they never let that go.
Hmm.
I remember when I was in Europe, especially Italy. I mean, they had farmers markets every morning, and there was probably, even their grocery stores were probably the same size as kind of like a D&W. Like, you could get groceries there, like name brand stuff, or you could just go to the farmer's market and get everything locally sourced.
Yeah.
And so if the economy collapses for Europe, they're gonna they're gonna be fine. We've been so dependent on name brands that it's gonna be hard to say, holy shit, like I could get freshly ground oatmeal at my local farmer's market and use that for cereal, or I can pay $10 a box at the store,
Hmm.
or I could get it for $3 for a pound at the farmer's market. That's the kind of stuff I think we need to continue to develop locally, is to become self-dependent or independent as a community, to say, even if things go batshit crazy, we can take care of ourselves. And
Well,
that's
and
where I get white pilled, because I think from my perspective, that's kind of like a libertarian dream,
yeah,
right? Like, no requirements or relying on any outside
no
forces.
certifications, no licensure.
We are totally independent as a community and self-sustaining and self-sufficient.
Hmm. Well,
And that's what I'd love to get to.
and if we really do hit like that kind of, or I guess I really should say when we hit that sort of like apocalyptic financial crisis, I think that stuff's just gonna pop up naturally. I think people are gonna be like, "Fuck this! I'm just gonna grow my own shit. I'm gonna buy some chickens and get some goats,"
Some
and
people, but you look at like the population of Detroit or New York or Chicago, These are people that don't have a clue how to take care of themselves.
Yeah. But there's a lot of literature out there. And that, I mean, that's the thing. Have you
But
ever,
if you live in a 15-story high rise, like, where are you going to garden? Like,
yeah.
where is a farmer's market going to be presented? That's where, like, I'm glad that I live in the community I do, because I'm surrounded by
Yeah,
farms,
you're out in the
and so
sticks.
I'm not worried about like food.
Hmm. Well, I mean,
So
where I live, I guess to people in those kind of metropolis cities like Chicago, Detroit, New York, LA, stuff like that, like figure it out, I guess. But
because I mean, the stores in those areas, I think they have maybe enough in stock for a couple days before they're gone.
oh yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, we saw the
like day
run on toilet
3.
paper,
Yeah,
right?
like day 3, those
Can you
stores are
imagine that
empty.
be the run on food instead
Yeah.
of just toilet paper?
Actually,
Like,
you know what?
gone.
It could be day 1, because if it gets to the point where like their supply lines are completely cut off and they're like, we're not getting any more produce, then those shelves are empty that day because people are going to be flooding every store, you know? But I think for places like the Midwest, like, the flyover states, like, I think that's going to be a pretty easy accomplishment, is that whenever the supply lines run up, like, we're just going to make our own, and that's the nice thing. There's a YouTube channel called Kurgsgazat. I don't know if it's a German word, but they do all these really, really fascinating videos on science and physics and evolution and space and all this stuff, and they're really good at asking very interesting questions that, like, nobody's wondering about. Like, they've done videos on, like, what happens if you throw a thing, this particular thing in a black hole or something like that, um but one of the things that they've done a video on is, like, what happens if there's this, like, massive calamity, whether it's an asteroid or a major earthquake, and it's like the quote unquote end of the world, and they were basically saying, like, you could wipe out 99% of human population and we're going to spring back, because there is so much hard data out there written down, you know that, we, like, there's plenty of literature out there for somebody to teach themselves how to be a doctor, you know
Well,
and
especially with the internet and stuff like that. I mean, there's a YouTube video for almost everything now.
yeah, yeah,
So if
absolutely.
you have access to that, yes, there's nothing you can't learn.
Yeah. And,
Which is
like,
crazy, the fact that we're paying $60,000 for a bachelor's degree
mhm,
when you could go on YouTube and learn all the same information for free.
yeah,
Isn't that crazy that it's basically we're just paying for a piece of paper?
mhm,
We're not paying for the education.
yeah,
The education's already out there.
yeah,
Yeah, that's another rant.
mhm. Which, like, I mean, at this point, you could go, like, so I'm in logistics. I could go and get a, I don't remember what the official name of it is, but it's like supply chain management or something like that. It's basically a business degree. I could go and learn all that I need to learn on YouTube or on a fucking Substack or something like that. Get it all done on the internet, learn everything I need to learn, and then just take a test. Spend $100 on a test and be like, this guy knows what he's talking about, and then boom, you show your test results at a job interview. Oh, okay, you're certified. you know
It's like getting a GED. Basically, if you didn't finish high school or you didn't go to high school at all,
yeah,
you can test out and get a GED that shows that you know just as much as a high school diploma.
yeah,
Like, that'd be can you imagine if you could do that for a bachelor's degree?
yeah,
Like,
or like a
that's
doctorate or something.
but that's I think almost another portion of, I mean, if we have a financial collapse and these education entities, I mean, there's colleges. If you go to Grand Rapids, literally there's a college in every corner,
Hmm.
or at least a campus in every corner. But if their enrollment, like, all of a sudden people are like, I can't afford it, and their enrollment drops by 50%, you're going to see bankruptcies at the college level like you wouldn't believe,
Yeah,
because they're so, dependent on the government loans, because it's always been there. But if people aren't going to college because they're like, I can't afford, a $60,000 bachelor's degree for a job working at Starbucks,
hmm,
like, that needs, I mean, that's it's a hard dose of reality, but people need to wake up and say, "There's no way I can pay this loan back."
Mhm. The like what people need to understand, especially young people. If there's any like really young people listening to this, take heed. You do not need a college degree. You know,
Right.
if you want to be a lawyer or a surgeon or something like that, like okay, yeah, go get a degree. But like I dropped out of college after 1 year. I say dropped out. I did not drop out. I got expelled. Somebody they dropped me out. So um but like I just started working, and it took a long time for me to like develop a really good work ethic, you know, because I was an idiot kid that was like working at Starbucks and not taking his job seriously. But after I had kids and kind of kicked myself in the balls a little bit, you know, I stopped calling in. I started taking my work very seriously. I started taking pride in my work, and I started getting all these promotions. I started making a lot more money. And now like I have a house, I have a family, I have 2 cars, and all on just a high school diploma. And like
And you probably didn't even need the high school diploma to achieve
no,
that
absolutely
success.
not. And that's the thing. Like you just have to have a really good work ethic, and you have to be goal oriented and drive yourself to like be better, you know? Like right now I am at a manager level, but I don't plan on staying here for forever, you know? I have my eyes set on like what my next move is, you know? And in order to get to that next spot, I have to be really good at what I'm doing right now, you know? And so that drives me to like learn as much as I can and never call in and never show up late, and do all these things to the best of my abilities, because at the end of the day, whenever reviews come around, or if my boss, you know, puts her 2 weeks in or something like that, I can be like, I can fill that spot, you know?
Right. Well, and I think people need to understand that, especially when it comes to jobs and all that, it's more your resume is more important than your any other piece of paper. So I always like tell people, look at, does this positively impact your resume or negatively? Because that's kind of your credit report when it comes to, the world, the working world. If you can show an impressive resume,
Mm-hmm.
um that that says a lot more than just a college degree.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been a hiring manager, and so I'm much more looking at their work history than I don't give a shit about their education unless it's a requirement because of a certification or something like that.
Well,
I
as
wanna
that.
see I wanna see, like, consistent work history.
Mhm.
If you're just, like, working at a job and you got another job every 3 months, sorry, no thanks.
Mhm.
Um, there is a balance. I mean, you definitely wanna stay in a role for a certain period of time. I would always suggest at least a year before moving on to something else,
Mhm.
but that's what you need to see is a progression of improvement,
Yeah.
and your resume should show that.
And
And like
here's
I've told my kids, I don't I don't care about your grades
yeah.
at all. Like, do your best. Try. That's all I'm asking is to do your best and try. That's it. Because I know that your grades do not reflect on you as a person.
Yeah.
And just because you can't get into Harvard or U of M, I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Like, to me, that's a benefit because you're not gonna have a $100,000 student loan
Yeah, you're
as
not gonna
opposed to
come back on
going.
Christmas break and call me a racist and tell you and tell me you hate me.
Right, or, constantly beg me for money because you ran out of ramen noodle soup and you can't afford to eat anymore because your tuition's so expensive.
Yeah.
Like, we have so many asset bubbles in the United States. It's not just housing, it's college tuition. That's another giant inflated asset bubble.
Yeah.
Like, we have so many bubbles that it's only gonna take one to pop to have such a huge, downstream ramification that could set off a chain reaction like we've never seen in the United States.
Mhm.
So, like, I always, at least not always, but especially recently, like, I'm not a huge prepper, but at the same time, inflation kind of justifies being a prepper, because if you buy 100 rolls of toilet paper today, you're going to save how much money because you didn't have to buy them tomorrow because the inflation rate is so bad.
Yeah.
So it is worth even if things don't turn into a nuclear holocaust or the dollar doesn't collapse, being a prepper actually is, I mean, it makes sense financially just because of inflation.
Yeah.
So, like, if you have the money, buy the stuff you need now,
Yeah.
because, I mean, we're going to see inflation persistent, if not increasing, for years.
Yeah.
So, if you need toilet paper, go out and get 100 rolls on Amazon now and throw it in your basement. Like, I've got like toilet paper en masse. I've got, get at least your basics. So even if things don't turn out as bad as they could, you're still going to save money because inflation's not going anywhere.
Yeah. Well,
So on that note, wipe your ass now instead of tomorrow.
well, to fully and finally wrap up, probably the happiest, most positive episode we've ever done. Thank you guys, everyone, for tuning in. It's this is, man, I fucking love doing this. I miss doing this.
One thing that I'd like to do, and we haven't actually even talked about this, so this is going to be a surprise to everybody, is I would like to use our locals and to do kind of a raffle. And what I'd like to do is have our, because I don't think I'll double check to make sure we don't have any subscribers on locals. But I would like to say for our next episode, we are going to pull one of our subscribers from locals into the episode.
Hell yeah.
So, we'll do our episode, whether there's interviews or whatever, and then we will bring somebody in from our locals community to join us in an episode of We Love the State.
And it could, oh yeah, and it could be like whatever you want to talk about,
Right, and I think that'll be a great kind of like a requirement, like.
Mm-hmm.
For our locals community, we're going to have a drawing every month. How about that?
Yeah.
Like, and we'll have somebody from our locals community on the podcast. And we will talk about your topic of choice.
Mm-hmm.
Now, doesn't mean that we are going to just focus on that the entire time, because we love to go off on side rants, but
I have no idea what you're talking about.
We will have a guest on the show, and we will, have or discuss their topic of choice.
That'd be fun. Because then what if they're like, my topic of choice is buttholes or something like that? It'd be like, all right, let's do this, an hour on buttholes.
Or like butthole bleaching.
Yeah.
Like, are you pro bleaching or anti bleaching? Is the dark circle around the butthole genetic, or is it caused by a lot of poo? I mean, whatever you want to talk about, we will address. We may not.
We're going to give you the libertarian stance on butthole bleaching.
On butthole bleaching, right? But I think that would be a fun way to get more engagement in our locals channel.
Mm-hmm.
We definitely need to be, I think, more pushing more things instead of YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Getting away from YouTube, because I think, I mean, once we really start taking off, YouTube's going to ban us.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So locals is going to be a big thing that we need to focus on, and
Rumble. I would imagine Rumble too. Okay.
So that'll be two big things that we're going to be focusing on this year, is getting more engagement from our listeners,
mm-hmm.
and not just like comments, because that's always great to get those type of feedbacks, but I'd love to have people on the show, like our listeners actually join us and talk about things, and maybe you're a little shy, if we draw your name and you're like, I don't want to be on camera,
mm-hmm.
that's fine.
We can make that work.
Yep, we can still make that work. Mm-hmm. Or if you want to say, we draw your name and you're like, I don't feel comfortable, but I would like to hear your guys' take on X.
That'd be
then we
cool.
can talk about your topic.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I crave feedback,
Mm-hmm.
and I think this would be a great opportunity for us to get real-time feedback from our listeners in a way that benefits everybody.
Yeah.
So again, everybody check out our locals community. Just search for We Love the State on locals. We will be getting more involved in Rumble. But yeah, we definitely want to have more engagement, and I think that is going to be a focus for this year.
Hell yeah. Well, let's go ahead and give out our plugs, and then we'll wrap this shit up. If you want to find me online, you can find me on TikTok at Andy Coons. That is Koons. Forgot to spell my own last name there for a second. If you want to find me on Twitter, which is where I go to say all the shit that'll get me banned off of TikTok, you can find me at Andy_Coons. I have a lot of fun on Twitter. Haven't been that active recently, but whenever shit's popping on Twitter, I usually love to go in there and talk a lot of shit. So it's fun. Yeah, you can find our website. Go to our website, buy some merch. We have merch. WeLoveTheState.com. You can also, that's where you can find our RSS feed as well.
And
And
I did release some new merch.
ooh,
So give that a check. Trying to think if I've got an example, but if we'll throw something in the show notes as far as merch goes. I got a really cool, you probably actually already seen it. It's the We Love the State logo, and then we've got military medals
yep.
from World War II. So it definitely kind of is a crest of military achievements.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, the medals are from
The most
Nazi Germany.
authoritarian governments in history.
Yeah, yeah, it's the medals for Goring. Oh, I can't remember his first name off the top of my head, but he was the head of the Luftwaffe in World War II. But and he was actually a World War One ace as well. So really cool design, really cool opportunity to spark conversations with others. It's been interesting, even at my work, having some of this conversations with people at work and be like, "We love the state. What does that mean?" Like, it's a great conversational starter. So you could say, "Oh no, I'm actually a libertarian. We're just using, the phrase and the iconography against the system."
Yeah.
So yeah, check out our merch, and you can find me. Picture This 1979 is kind of my handle on Instagram and on not TikTok. I haven't ventured that far down into the depths of social media, but it's Picture This 1979 on Instagram as well as on Twitter. You can check us out on Facebook as long as we're still there. But my big thing is I really want people to look at locals and Rumble. I mean, I think that's our long-term goal, is to grow those audiences, and we'll be there.
All right. Sounds great. Guys, thank you for joining us. Thank you for sticking with us for what's it been? We're going on 7 months, right?
Isn't it? I think you're right, because I had a memories pop up. I don't remember if it was on my phone or where, but it was like it feels like we've been doing this for a lot longer than we actually have.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, shoot, man. I think the first episode came out in May. Well, it was right after the national convention. And I think that was the end of May.
Yeah, and I think I joined what, like June, or
Yeah, it would have been like the middle or the end of June, cuz like after your episode, I think you first came in on
as a guest.
as a guest on
Yep.
episode 4, and then we stopped recording, and then we got on the phone and we're talking about the episode, and you're like, "Yeah, man, I've always wanted to do something like this." And I was like, "Well, I need a co-host, so welcome aboard."
You're hired.
So, anyway, yeah, we
Thanks
got to
everybody for
figure out
listening.
you know what we should do? Let's plan on our 1-year anniversary being a live show.
Oh, that we need to guarantee that one for sure.
Okay.
It may not be our first live show, but we will have a live show by then, if not at that time.
Yeah. Okay. We have to make this happen.
Yeah.
Okay, let us know on all of our socials what you think, like what you want a live show to look like. Just let us know. This is going to be awesome.
Yeah. And check us out on locals. I will double check, but I will also say for our first 5 subscribers, you're going to get a t-shirt.
Okay.
And out of the first group of people, we will do a drawing to have you on the podcast, or at least have a topic from you on the podcast.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So there's your New Year's resolution.
All right. Hell yeah. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next week.
Peace.